Hello, this is Joe at Sierra Specialty Auto. Welcome back to the shop. I have a project which is going to require either a superspacer or some similar tool to drill indexed holes at 90 degrees into round material. Too big to go into a 5C collet, so I can't use a collet block. I happen to be fortunate to have a good friend who owns an 8-inch Cushman superspacer with a 3-jaw chuck. I have borrowed that tool from him, but it needs some attention. It's, I think, been operated with flood oil coolant, and there's a lot of debris and gummy oil in the works of this thing, to the point where it's very difficult to get it to rotate, and the indexing pin that's supposed to locate it at, in this case, 15-degree angles. It's a 24 position indexing ring that's installed in it right now, so each notch is 15 degrees. The indexing pin is stiff, and I think the handle that operates it is out of time. So I'm going to break this thing down pretty much all the way down to every nut and bolt, take it completely apart, clean everything, put it back together with whey oil, and see if we can't get it working in a more agreeable manner. So I've got this right now. It's on the table of my milling machine, and that seems to be a good place to work from, especially for the first few fasteners that have to be probably yanked on pretty hard to get them to break loose. Right now I've got it bolted down to the mill table, so it'll stay put while I'm pushing and pulling on it. So let's go over to the milling machine. The first problem that I find here with the spacer is the locking pawl. This is a spring-loaded pawl that is supposed to register, supposed to come up and fit snugly in these notches. This particular plate is 24 teeth, so that gives you, I think, every 15 degrees. But it does not. It just barely hits into the, starts into the slot and leaves it loose by a degree or so. So that's inaccurate to begin with. I did one job on the spacer a few days ago and fought my way against that, got the job done, but was not convenient. So I came around here to the side. There's a plug holding a spring pushing into this locking dog. I thought I would probably, the locking dog has a rack on it. On the other side there's a handle with a pinion which engages the rack. I thought maybe I could just push the rack out. I already cleaned this up a little bit and re-engage as necessary, retime the handle to allow it to go in, and with the locking handle out, it does go all the way in and register tight into that notch. So so far so good. I can clean that up, clean all these parts. I kind of suspect this was run in flood cutting oil, and this is just, it's gummed up with cutting oil. But the second problem, and even more annoying, is it's very stiff. I have to pull quite hard to get it to move. You can't just swing it a degree or two. You have to hit it to get it to move. I tried spraying some penetrating oil. This is my favorite Tri-Flow for lubricating and penetrating. If it's just a rusted fastener, I go with PB Blaster. That's my go-to rust busting penetrant. If I want to leave some lubricant in the assembly, I go with this Tri-Flow. So I sprayed some at the parting line between the chuck mounting plate, and I sprayed in here. No joy, still very stiff. So I'm going to have to take this apart. I think if I take the index plate off, I think I can get this to go out in that direction, clean everything up, put it back together with some whey oil, and then I should be able to just put a hand on here and pull it around. We'll see how that works. I'm going to start with some brake parts cleaner to try to clean off this register that the index plate goes over, because I can feel that it has a gummy residue on it right there. If I don't do this, I think that plate will fight all the way out. Now let's see if I have enough tools here. There are three, what are these, 5/16 Allen screws holding the index plate on, and I can see that there are the holes at 90 degrees, or excuse me, at 180 degrees, a pair of holes to use to allow the use of the retaining screws as jack screws. So pull these back in, they should bear against something in there. And I can see already that plate's starting to move. Work that around about, what is that, 3/4 of a turn at a time. And that plate's coming. I'm hoping when it gets to the clean part of the register there that it'll sneak on off. It still feels like it's pretty gummy, pretty sticky. I think I'm going to have to jack it all the way off of there. Yeah, I'm just about out of thread here. Yep, and it's still coming hard enough that I'm going to need a longer jack screws. So let me go get a pair of longer jack screws. Alright, here's what I came up with. I think these are toilet bolts for holding the toilet down to the floor, but I got two of them, a pair of vice grips, so I should be able to run these in and pull that the rest of the way off. There's one up, bearing against the whatever's behind there. I don't know if my friend has more index plates for this. I'll have to ask him. This particular division is completely adequate for what I'm going to be doing. I just need 90 degrees on that when I get ready to do my next project with it. There we go. And we have in here, we have the An adjustment over here for the brake. Two adjustments actually for the brake, and here's on this side is the actuator for the brake. So what do I need now? That's still not going to come off of there with what I'm looking at now. I may have to turn this around and get at it from the other end. I am going to try first, now that I can get back in here to the right place, I'm going to try spraying some lube and running that around. If I can get it to loosen up without having to take it all the way apart, I'm going to do that, because I'm not that interested in seeing everything that's in here. That's still pretty stiff. No, there's one spot where it comes around and it really locks up. There's maybe 180 degrees of relatively free travel, and then she locks, doesn't lock up, but it drags a lot. Okay, so I see no additional fasteners that I can work with here. So we have to go to the other end. No, just occurred to me there might be Allen head down in here, but there's nothing. Those are blind. And these brake shoes are tapered. There's a taper down into there, which makes this diameter much larger than the hole behind it. So I'm going to shut the camera off for a second, swing this around and start working my way into the other end. I have clamped this back down so I can beat on it without fear of it sliding off onto my foot. Gotta get that chuck off. And I was thinking those would probably be tight, because this chuck's probably been on here for a month of Sundays. I don't know if you can see how much effort I'm having to put into the we're missing one of the retaining bolts. That's interesting. I'll have to see if I can come up with another one. Get all ready to take that somewhere and ready to catch it when it falls off. I can already feel that it's loose. This isn't going to be any lighter than any other 8-inch chuck, I can tell that. And we can stand for a little cleaning in there too. Now then, we're looking at another set of screws. What's the deal there? All of a sudden this is turning pretty freely. I wonder if that lubricant I put in finally made it somewhere. I'm going to add a little more in here and see if I get lucky. maybe I'll end up being able to stop here and just clean everything that's exposed. That's about what I would expect. That's very nice. I think that LPS, or excuse me, that Tri-Flow just finally got in there where it needed to be. And now I can clean up and put this back together. I'm going to turn the camera off while I do the cleaning. I don't think too many people are going to be interested in the dirty work here. When I'm ready to start putting it back together, I'll bring you back. We're making progress here, but I'm still not real happy with the feel. It's much better, but I think there's still a bunch of garbage in there. It just doesn't have a good, clean, smooth feel. So I'm going in, as Musty One would say, going in. Take it to the next step. It's only bits and pieces. What can we hurt? This will allow me to take some of these pieces over to the parts washer. I don't want to put the whole thing in there. It's heavy enough to be real awkward trying to do that. So now I have to try to figure out what comes off. There's no jack bolt holes here. I don't believe. Clean that up and see if I can tell anything about what that looks like. Earbuds, what warning? Hate that flashlight. By golly, that might be jack bolt holes. Let's get, can I swing this? I believe I can. One of these holes is still full of chips, the one that had the missing bolt. Aha, that was, apparently that was all it took, is that little bit of a touch with the tap in there. Let's see, there we go. Ugh, ugly. I think that was the right choice. Taking this farther apart. Now I'm going to guess, didn't need these after all. Oh, nasty. I'm going to guess if I clean this up and tap on it with a dead blow hammer, that this is going to start out the other side. Then I'll probably have to take that brake apart. Oh, what are we clamped onto now? It still might come. This might be just a collar. we'll see if anything happens. Certainly nothing there. Well, let's take another look in this hole. That goes all the way. That may be another jack screw hole. Run this in lightly and see what happens. There may be a parting line here that I can't see because of the dirt in there. Not that one. Now this is going to pull it out against the brake on the other side. I need to turn it around and take that brake apart. So let's shut down for a moment and I'll get that spun around again. I think I'm done with the heavy duty pushing and pulling on this, and I've got enough weight on it. I believe I can hang on to it well enough to keep it from falling off the table under my foot. So now I got to get the brake out of here. This is one of the adjuster screws, the top adjuster screw. And back that off all the way out of my way. Probably have to get the bottom one loosened up too. And have to unwind the brake here. This is the screw for the brake. There we go. Got that loose. Maybe, will you come out? Yes, all right. I'm going to lay that on the back side. And here's the spring that goes with it on the back side. And there's a little nut in here. See how that comes out. Adjuster nut. Has to come out of there somehow. That way. Okay, have to turn it end on to get it in there. Have to remember that when it goes back together. And here's the spring for the other side. Now, what happens here? Nope, must come out the other way. There we go. Okay, here's the brake for one side. And are these keyed somehow so I can't mix them up? Okay, yeah, the holes go at the top. The through holes go at the top. So set those. And now, let's see what happens if I try to tap this out in the other direction. There she goes. There she goes. All right. Okay. Already did some cleaning on that. The parts that are way inside don't look too terribly bad. But again, I have this broken down now to the point where I can take all of these pieces one at a time over to the parts washer and clean them up. And the only part left in here is the adjuster, the bottom adjuster, and well, top adjuster's in here too. They're free, or this one's free anyway. And I had loosened that one earlier a little bit, so it's free. I will get some other parts clean and then make some room, lay this down, get those screws out, and get it clean. Then we'll come back when it's time to put everything back together. Well, it's the next day. We've got all the parts cleaned, all the machine surfaces are polished up by hand with Scotch-Brite. Fasteners are all clean, ready to begin assembly and put this back together. First thing I want to do is wipe a little whey oil in here on this mating surface. I'm going to leave this unbolted for a while until I get it heavy enough to start worrying about it, and also until I have to start tightening fasteners. First part to go in. Well, let's wipe those two. This dovetail under here is the friction surface for the brake. Pretty snug fit. There we go. I like that. Come around to this side. I'm going to lay that down on this piece of wood so I can work inside the hole here. I don't know how good the view is going to be in here. I think this is a little tricky getting these brake parts in here. Make sure we've got them right. Locking pin goes in there, so this must go here. And here's the other hole for the other end of the locking screw. And here's the screw itself. Run that in from the bottom here. Through the first brake shoe. And the spring has to be in here, one of them. Through the second shoe. Come on. All right. Now, I found out yesterday that this is a tricky little job. I think they must have had some special tooling at the factory to assemble this. Let me see if I can get a little better view here. Let me move the camera. This is the locking screw for the brake. Comes through the bottom part of the brake and through the spring into the top part. The tricky thing here is getting the spring compressed enough to start the screw into the retaining nut. The retaining nut has a 1/4 of an inch or so with no thread in here, so the screw has to penetrate a 1/4 of an inch before the thread picks up. So yesterday I'd got this piece of 1/2 inch aluminum and ground a radius on the end, just sufficient to let it start into the gap between the body and the brake shoe, and tapped that in enough to hold this brake shoe steady. Then we need about another pair of hands. This has to go in here sideways and then get turned and brought back into position. This is kind of tricky. They must have had people with small hands to put this stuff together at the factory. But my big fat fingers are having a problem with this. And this has 2 ears to register in a slot on the brake shoe to keep it from turning, of course. They have to be registered in with the brake shoe. Aha, I got it. I got it. That's a good feeling. I'm going to pop this out. The other side works against set screws, and I think I'm going to reset the camera now. Here on the other side are the adjuster screws, one top and one bottom. Spring goes in first. It sets into pockets in the brake shoe flange here, ear, and I'll see if I can keep a view here for you. We'll bring these in, get a rough adjustment. I think you'll be able to see that screw coming in. That bears on the bottom ear. Get just a tiny bit of tension on there. And a identical but opposite screw coming in from the top. I don't think I have this in the pocket here. There we go. Bring this top shoe down. I think you can see the adjustment closing up right here on this gap. I'm just going to get this in the ballpark for now and wait on the final adjustment until I have a better handle. There's not much to grab a hold here, and this whey oil on these very close fitting surfaces makes it still a little, not drag, but it's a little stiff to turn. So when I get the chuck on the other side, I'll have a better handle to hang on to it. For the moment, we've got the lower and upper adjuster screws somewhere in the ballpark. Next part to go on is this indexing ring. A little more whey oil on these mating surfaces. With any luck, that'll drop in a little easier than it came out. Line up those threaded holes. These are the jack bolts that I used. I'm not even quite certain I'm on the right set of holes there. There we go. Yeah, I guess I was. Get these jack bolts started in here to act as guide pins. Alright, now I should be able to work this down. It is very snug. That's the sound we're looking for. Find an appropriate wrench. We should be able to turn that right in. Yep. Get the guide pins back out. And I think I'll be able to get these as tight as they need to be with this wrench. I don't think I need the leverage of a regular L-shaped wrench. All right. I'm gonna swing this around and get the register mechanism into the field of view. The indexing handle was particularly crusty, almost as if it had been in water. But none of the other parts looked like they had been in water, rusty. There is one chipped tooth right here. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up. Sometimes things show better on the video than they do in the camera monitor. I'll have to try to keep that tooth off of the indexing pin. The indexing pin goes in here and comes out. I'll go ahead and push it in so it shows on the inside. Comes out here and indexes into the slot. But it has to be timed with the pinion on the handle, and we want hopefully to end up with the busted tooth out of the picture. So if I that's not quite it. I need to come one tooth around. I think somebody must have beat on that with a hammer to get it to go. All right, I'm holding pressure with my finger, and you can see that I'm indexing, operating the index pin. the handle is up alongside the rotating part, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think that's all right. Now we have a dog point set screw to hold the indexing handle in place. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. It has to mate with a groove in that handle, and I think I found it. Okay, there's a lock. All right, that'll work. All right, there's that snugged up. The spring goes all the way into a recess in the index pin, and this nut has a recess to pick up the spring and hold it centered. Get that started. And that's, for such a small diameter spring, it's a pretty stout one. Get that just snugged up with an old Stilson wrench. All right, there operates the pin, and the handle will go in. You can push it down, and there's a slot at the right point, a slot that meets up with the groove for the dog point set screw, and you can hook this on that slot with the spring tension pulled out to get this index pin completely out of the way. You can see there the pin is not even showing. Then when I pull this handle out, it springs up and locks. So the normal operation would be to retract the index pin, rotate the spindle to the desired position, release the handle, and the spring pushes the index pin into position. But if you want it free floating, pull down and push the handle in that direction, down and in. There, I don't know. Did you see that? Maybe that'll show. There's no gap here right now. Now there's a 1/4 inch gap. So push down and in, and that locks the pin in place. So we'll leave that out for the moment. That's everything that came out of here. I have a suspicion that there was originally a cover plate. There's a recess here with a lip. I think there may have been a cover plate that went on here and some kind of spring wire retaining clip to hold it in, keep the garbage out of here. And that would have been a big help if it had been in place to keep all of that, the chips and congealed cutting oil and other garbage that had gotten in there. Would have been nice if that had been in place. But it's not my tool, and I'm not going to worry about that. I might ask the owner when I return it if he would like such a plate, in which case I'll offer to fabricate one as partial payment for the use of the tool. I'm going to lay this on its back now. Hopefully without leaving my tip of my finger there. Time to set the chuck on here. One of these cap screws was missing. I checked locally for about $7 for one. The local hardware store can get me one of these half-inch 13 by 3-inch. Or if I'm patient, I can order 5 of them from McMaster Carr for $6.71, I believe it was. So I've got an order ready to, online order ready to post tomorrow. Let's get the, there's an intermediate register plate that goes on. Now these are not moving surfaces here, so I'm going to put them together dry. I'm going to look, there's, I cleaned all this pretty well with Scotch-Brite, but I'm expecting that I will see where this one pair of odd holes is. There's 3 threaded holes at 120 degrees and 2 unthreaded holes, and I can see in the tarnish on here, I can see where those 2 holes were. I don't think it makes any difference, but it's just as easy to put it back the way it came as it is to put it together differently. And we do have all 3 of the correct screws for this. Get them started to act as guide pins. All right. Get those started. Tap that home. Aha. That's it. Again, I don't see any need for these to be honking tight. They just have to keep things together. One more dusting. And wipe the mating surfaces on the chuck. Oh, this one, there's no nothing to indicate register here, and I can't see that it makes any difference. That slipped right on, but it is a really tight fit. Let's find a hole in here. There we go. And again, I have chased all of these threaded holes with the appropriate taps. Make sure they're all clean and take the fasteners easily. For now, we have to settle for 2 of the Allen head bolts, but around Wednesday, I think I'll have another bolt for the other side, for the other position. Now, let's see if I can turn it. Yes, I can. It is still a little stiff because of the whey oil on the tightly mated surfaces, but it moves slowly, and there's very little stiction. I can get it moving. I can move it a degree at a time very easily, whereas before, by the time I got it moving, I was 15 or 20 degrees. I'd have to put the chuck handle in to get it to move. The only hope I had of fine-tuning it was to do something like this. But now it turns nicely of its own accord. And release the pin, turn it, and the pin snaps right back in. When I started, that pin would engage only 1/8 of an inch deep, if that, and it had to be coaxed with the release handle. So this has worked out very well. Complete tear down, cleaning, lubrication, replace an incorrect fastener, order a replacement for the missing fastener, and this is back in service, working, I would imagine, just about as well as it did when it was new. That was a bit of effort, but I think a piece of tooling like that is well worth the time spent to put it back in clean and good condition. And I don't mind at all doing it in exchange for the use of the tool. I don't need one often enough to justify buying one. I figure if I need something 3 times in a year, I should go buy one, but this is the first time in about 5 years that I've had to borrow this tool. So that works for me, and it works for my friend too, because he'll get his tool back in better shape than when I borrowed it. And I like to do that anyway when I borrow something. So we'll close this out now. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll comment. I hope you'll subscribe. Come back to the shop again sometime.